The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, some guns. Why didn't you shoot them?
The guns are all the way over there.
Okay. And some soup. Wait, you made him soup?
Yeah. It's cold out.
All right. Lots and lots of truth. Hey, did you tell him the truth?
Yeah.
Are you telling me the truth?
Yeah.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
Yeah. I'm Steve.
This is podcast episode number 278. This week, folks, we're going to be covering episode 6 of the first season of The Last of Us. The title of the episode is Kin. Like, that's my kin. Can't shoot my kin. It's very southern.
I can too.
I can. So,
could it possibly be I have a kin doll? No.
No. That'd be weird, right?
Yeah, this would be totally weird. Totally.
Yeah. Ken dolls are weird. They're not anatomically correct. Oh my God, that's totally another podcast. Anyway, moving on. There's cold beds kicking in. Just a quick shout out, folks. I'm got a little bit of a cold, so you might hear a couple of coughs here and there. I do have a beverage, doing the best I can, and I will try and stifle as best I can. But you know, those things just jump right up and seize you. So if I do, I apologize. I'll try and stifle as best I can. But anyway, let's get into actually talking about the episode. Quick thoughts. Whose turn is it to go first?
Let's see.
I think it's yours.
Yes,
because I think we flip-flopped the last one.
We did. And the last one, yeah, I went first and then you went second. So I believe it is my turn. So.
Well, age before beauty. Go for it.
Don't know how to respond to that one.
Well, why don't you tell us about the episode while you think about it?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think it's a really good episode. I really enjoyed it. I think it, in terms of the storyline of the video game, it is just right dead center down the middle. And there's a lot of direct calls from the game that are in this episode that I did kind of jot down. So we'll talk about those when we get there. I thought there was some incredible moments between Joel and Ellie, and and their kind of evolving relationship, and oh yeah, that little damn them all to hell cliffhanger at the end.
Yeah.
So
I was bitching a little bit before we started recording about
a little. Yeah, I definitely noticed it.
Yeah.
And unlike the last ones, like you said, we didn't have another one to watch immediately where you could get your fix. So now you have to wait the week. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. What'd you think?
I liked it. I think it's bold to be like right in this first season. We're getting to know these people. Like, take somebody like me, which we reference this every week, but I have no experience with this storyline. I don't know anything other than the very basics of the game, so I have no idea what's coming. And the fact that they were bold enough to be like 3 months later, like, wow, for a show like that to take a 3-month narrative jump so early in the story, I thought that was very bold and very cool. I always love... and I've talked about this in our coverage of The Walking Dead, seeing different locations is one thing, but also it's crazy how weather impacts the smallest things too. So I love that we're tackling winter weather here, and what it's like to be in the snow and the cold, yada yada, because it adds another layer of it being difficult to find shelter, etc. It's not like you can lay out in a sleeping bag and look at the stars, when it's 20 below zero. So I enjoy the fact that there's some bold choices there with the wintertime, the 3-month jump. We're meeting some new people. Again, because of the way this story is told, I'm not sure if we'll go back to those people. And like I said, without knowing the overall story arc, I don't know for sure. But I think that one of the great things about this show is their story is supported by when you meet these new people, like the Henrys and like the Kathleens and stuff like that. So they're supported by this cast, but you don't have to go back to them. Like, we could never go back to Bill, and it would still remain a very important episode where you learned things, it moved the plot forward, you learned more about your characters, and it had its place. Same thing here. I don't know if we're going to go back to their little town, their little utopia, but I think exactly the same thing. That we learned more about our characters. There was some plot stuff that drove forward, and a little bit more intrigue added in there, some questions added in, and I would say that of the 6 that we've watched so far, it's not my favorite. There were no infected in this episode again. And there was only a little bit of action really towards the end, and it was quick. It was very quick. So it was a lot of, sort of exposition, talking, learning about people. So there were a couple of moments a little bit slow, but I think the importance of the things that were being discussed sort of overrode all of that. But overall, really, really like the episode. Not my favorite of the 6 so far, but definitely just a solid episode. And when you take these 6 episodes and rank them, even if, you pick one of the 6 that was your least favorite so far, my least favorite of the 6 so far is still so far ahead of most things that are put on television these days, that even their, I'm air quotes, their worst episode so far would be miles ahead of anything else, even on like the pay networks that's being done. There's just nothing like this out there. So yeah, anyway, great episode. Can't wait to get into the details.
Me neither, man. I thought you're right. There is no infected in this. There's a little bit of action way at the very end, but boy, did so much happen.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And it's funny. I think that's another good thing about this show is it wasn't until we just started talking about it and I thought in my head I was going to make the point. I'm like, were there any infected in this episode? And I was like, no, there wasn't. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right, there wasn't. So if the show itself doesn't need that, like that is obviously a driving force of the story, but if it's not present in the episode doesn't suffer because of it, right? So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So all right, so let's get into talking about details about the episode. Before we do that, let's just check in with a real quick episode description if you want to go ahead and do that, and we'll move on.
All right, well, as you originally already said, this is The Last of Us, episode 1.6. The title is Kin, like the Greg Kinn band, for you people that are over 40. After ignoring the advice of locals, Joel and Ellie descend deeper into dangerous territory in search for the Fireflies and Tommy. And that is your episode description.
Interesting. There you go. Ignoring the advice of locals.
Yeah.
I love the way that's worded because it's not wrong. It just makes it seem like they ran into a band of locals and it's literally just, Marlon and Florence, and that's it.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So let's talk writer and director, and then we'll get into our points. Writer, familiar? Not familiar?
I believe so. It's this. They handed the reins off to a new guy to try and prove himself. No, they didn't. This is of course again Craig Mason, and so again, like we've kind of said every time, this is his story. He worked with Neil Druckmann on the overall story, which is adapted from the video game, but he's writing the scripts for the most part. So
Nice.
And then the director is a gal by the name, and I'm gonna totally butcher this because she's like Serbian or Romanian or something, and her name is Jasmila Zbanic, and there's lots of accents and stuff in her name on top of the letters, so I'm sure there are interesting pronunciations of it. And I looked her up on the internet, on the social media, and she has a lot of credits, but a lot of them are shorts and things that she made, I'm guessing, in Europe, because they have titles with lots of letters in it that I'm not sure what the words are. But I thought as a director, she was fine. She did a perfectly good job. She had a nice touch on both the action at the end and on the interpersonal stuff. So, I got no complaints. I thought she was really good. So that is your writer and your director.
Awesome. Yeah, as soon as I saw that the director, I was like, ooh, it's going to be a mouthful for poor Steve there. So speaking of our love and admiration for Marlon and Florence, how about that opener? Love it. I like, too, the way it teased you a little bit, because as Marlon is walking up to the cabin, since I don't know the thread of, like I said, the game storyline, I had no idea that this was going to be a new character. Since it says 3 months, they did the 3 months later thing. I was like, well, maybe this is where they're hunkering down until the weather breaks a little better, until it starts to thaw a little. So I honestly, and I think it was intentionally done that way, as Marlon's walking up and he puts the rabbits by the door and he opens the whole time I was like, is that Joel? I thought it could be, and then when he walks through the door and then you realize what's happening there. So I thought that was really nicely way that they filmed it. I love those actors. I think they're great. They were on Northern Exposure. I love Graham Greene. I mean, he's fantastic. And just their whole, I know we made fun of it in the in the opener, but all of their exchanges were just great, Oh my God, you make them soup? It's cold.
It's cold. Well, it's like, why didn't you shoot him? And she's like, the gun's all the way over there. Yeah. Oh yeah. She's adorable. And yeah, I agree. I love Graham Greene. He has been in some really amazing stuff over the years. So whenever he turns up, I'm always excited because he's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as he took the hood off and I was like, oh, Graham Greene. I love him. He's a great, he's one of those great character actors where he's got a really great career and he's done so many really great things that, his name. I know he's Graham Greene. But a lot of people would see his face and go, ooh, that guy, because he's done so much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's great because he is Native American and he's done lots of really great, movies, TV series and things like that, that either centered around or had storylines that involved Native and Indigenous peoples. And he's been a part of those. But he's also done some other stuff where it's just breaking out of the mold of, where you'd expect to see a Native person. I look at him, I hate to tell you, and I see Die Hard with a Vengeance. I'm sorry.
Do you really? Okay.
Yeah. Obviously the thing he's probably most known for is Dances with Wolves.
Yeah.
But I see him and I see him giving John McClane shit and I'm like, he's great in that movie. He really is great in that movie. So I don't know.
I see
that's
him.
A fantastic thing for a character actor,
Yeah. I whenever I see him, I always see him from Maverick, which is the James Garner Mel Gibson film.
Oh.
When he's the Indian that the Russian guy, the rich Russian royal is paying all this money to, so the Russians expecting him to act like he appears that the Native Americans would appear in the dinosaur novel, so he has to go how and all this stuff, and then he does it in front of him, but then when he's in front of Maverick, because they're all kind of con men, he's like, "What are you doing, man? Come on!" And it's very funny. It was just a wonderful comedic turn in that movie. So that's why. But at that and like you said, like obviously Die Hard 2 and certainly Northern Exposure, those two were so fun on that show.
Oh yeah, they were amazing. He was, I mean, I guess if you connect him with Dances with Wolves the most, it makes sense. He was nominated for an Oscar for that movie, so it makes sense. So yeah, but anyway, so there was a nice little Northern Exposure Easter egg for the both of them to be there, and their scene was short, information filled, adorable. And I just thought it was really cool. Just and ultimately they didn't want to hurt anyone. They just wanted information. They wanted to know. They were lost on the map. They knew, like, we're in this area. Where in this area are we?
You got
there's
the
no
map.
sign.
Why can't
no
you
signs
read it?
anymore.
There are no street signs in the forking woods.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that opener. I thought it was great. So.
Yeah, I did too. And what I thought was real interesting was that they flash back and we see Henry with the gun, and he pulls the trigger, and then it smashes black, and then when it fades up, we're in the snowy location, and it says 3 months later, and that is pretty much how it happens with the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I think I mentioned that last week, in that there is the scene with the graves is not in the game. Right. Literally, that cutscene is the end of that chapter of the game, and I think if the game's got like 5 or 6 chapters to it, and they tend to go by season, not month. So when he shoots himself, it smashes to black, and then when it fades up, it's snowing. And Ellie and Joel are on foot in the woods, like in the mountain kind of area like that. And it says winter when it fades up. And and then you kind of walk through the woods for a little bit. There's a couple of conversations you have. And then the first thing you come up to is the hydroelectric plant. And no, don't ask me how it works, because I don't know. So that and then that propels the story, because that's where Tommy is, and then you find Tommy, and then you go on from there. So I really kind of liked that they, last week when the way they ended it was great with that scene with the graves and the I'm sorry and all that, but the way they opened this episode, that was, I think, a little nod yet again to the gamers of like, yeah, we know how the game goes, and we just kind of wanted to show you we could do it how the game goes if we wanted to. So
we just chose not to.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, it was nice to get that little this is where we are, this is where we were, and this is where we are now. Yeah,
right. And the two Marlon and Florence are not in the game. That's obviously something that was constructed just for the show, and they're, like you said, they're awesome. So no complaints.
Good construction. I appreciate it. Especially, all those lines. You even got that. One of the best ones is when Joel asks advice. You got that line there.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't write it down too, but at one point, when they say, don't, if your friend Tommy is West, he's dead, and Marlon goes, don't scare her, or no, Ellie I think says, you can't scare me, and then Florence goes, I scared him. And again, there's a kernel of truth in there, because Joel knows what's out there. He knows what the road's like. But yeah, there's a point in there when they've kind of, the tension is dropped. He asked about the map, and they kind of gave the right answer. And so Joel puts his gun away, right? So they kind of have calmed down. It's not so much a tense, are you going to kill us, are you not moment. And Joel then asks them, hey, do you got any advice on the best way west? And Marlon, without missing a beat, goes, yeah, go east.
Wow. Yeah.
And they do. They sort of set up this idea of there's this river that they, basically anything to the west of it, people have crossed and they never come back. And these two have found bodies washing up on their side of it that are, some of them are infected, some are not, but they're all dead always, and so they're just like, you just don't go there because whoever's there, they just kill everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of that, they move along, and it's interesting because the way they move through like the land, they make it to a river, and of course, Ellie is like, "Ooh, scary river. I don't see
river of
anything.
death.
River of death," and she's making fun of it. And Joel's like trying to be cautious. He's like, "We'll do this. It's getting dark. We'll go here. There's a cave. We'll stay there for the night, blah, blah, blah."
Right.
So then when they move on their way the next day, they come upon a different river as they're going in the direction. And then they have a moment, and Ellie's like, "Well, are we sure that was the bad river?" And basically like, did we have the right river? She's like, was I mocking the correct river? Right. So he's looking at the map, and it's like, while they are trying to figure out like, oh crap, like, were we at the right river? Was he pointing to this one? Was it, you know what I mean? Like there's some confusion for a hot second, and they're looking down. And as they're looking down, there's like horses come over like this ridge and come and encircle them and start asking questions, etc. And I thought it was interesting because it's definitely, we are used to this look. They are pandemic riders because they're all wearing face masks.
Yeah, right.
Which is smart, because, as we found out, and if there's any information out there about the actual fungus, there's portions of it that could end up being airborne if it's attached. It was attached to like the flower spores, they were saying. And so it's like, could those pieces become airborne in some way? It's possible. So that's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's just one of the ways fungus naturally travels anyway, is they do the spores, they do that where they're lighter than air and they get blown around from place to place. So that's that's just, again, whether or not there's ever any evidence that this particular ickiness brand of fungus could do that, it just makes sense to be careful, and I think I pointed out there are points in the game where you go underground or you go into a building or something, and suddenly Joel will be like, "Oh crap, spores," and then he'll put a gas mask on. Yeah. And then and usually it's harder to see, it's kind of cloudy, and it ratchets up the fear and the tension in the game because you now have a much less visible screen to look at, and also it also kind of constricts your vision because now you're looking through the eye holes of a gas mask, so and they've chosen not to go that route in this, and as people have said, if Pedro Pascal does another show protecting a child and he has to wear a mask, it's just not fair,
Yeah, no kidding.
So they kind of cut that out. But anyway, just going beyond that, it makes sense that here are these people, and they're outside in this incredible scenic, rustic, outdoors, right? And yet all of them have the handkerchiefs or the actual masks, that they're wearing. Yeah, you're right. And you have to think that somewhere in there, someone said that, let's put that in there because of COVID and everything that we've just gone through, to kind of call back to it.
Yeah. I would have to say, too, that there's as much as there's a pandemic practicality to it, I'm not going to lie. There's been moments through the COVID pandemic where we were someplace and it was winter and I was cold and I had a mask and I put it on and I was like, wow, I'm much warmer now.
Keeps
and it
your
is
face
winter for
warm,
them.
Don't it?
Yeah, it did. It did. So I can say that, they're keeping themselves free of infection. When you are riding on a horse, inevitably there is a lot of dust that gets kicked up. So there's that.
There is that.
That's where the whole kerchiefs thing for cowboys came from. And then, it's fucking cold.
That's
It's
right.
Wyoming in the wintertime. These guys are cold. So, cover up your face. Might as well.
Totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, and and there's plus it looks cool. These guys we don't know who they are. They're
We don't know.
strangers.
That's right.
And they're all covered up. Who could you be? I don't know. Not that it matters, because even if they had the masks off, they have no idea who these people are. Which I thought was hilarious. But how about that? I guess you can't really call it an interrogation scene, but you're interrogated by the sniffing dog.
Oh my
That's
God.
a little tense.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, it just unbelievable, because of course it goes up to Joel first, right?
Yeah.
And so then you're left with he passes the test, the dog doesn't freak out. Whew, okay, that's good.
Ooh.
But then you're just like, oh no, it's gonna go to Ellie now, and oh, what's it gonna think of Ellie, and why are you making me watch this? Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought, like, I liked the way they did it too. They subvert your expectations. You're expecting, because she really does have the virus in her. But
Right,
I
you
guess,
think, right?
yeah. But I think because she would
popped negative on the test on the machine.
Yeah, she would always get the red whenever there was the machine thing. I mean, maybe that subsides with time. I don't know, but last time we saw, she still had the stuff on her arm. So I don't know. I'm not sure about, like, she pulls a positive test on, like, the scanner thing, but the dog doesn't smell it. It's weird. It's weird how it worked out that way, but it did work out. And of course, the dog's licking her face, and so everything's fine.
And she's giggling, good. And yeah, she's suddenly like, "Oh, cute dog," and you're like,
adorable.
"Oh God."
And it's great because it transitions from that scene where you're like, "Oh, thank God," to they get to their settlement location, they unlock the gates, they open it up. I'm like getting strong Walking Dead vibes when they do that. But they open the gates, they go through. And I thought it was interesting because they are actually in Jackson, Wyoming. Jackson Hole, however you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is I've been to Jackson, and it is...
That could be a song.
I've been to Jackson. Probably.
It could even be a duet.
Jackson Hole is a very expensive place to go. And I always think it's funny because, like, when you think about, like, family vacations and, like, the quintessential family vacations, you think of things like going to, like, the Grand Canyon and whatever, or going to Yellowstone, which is when my wife and I did our road trip to Yellowstone. We spent a day and a half in Jackson. We spent the night there. It was the most expensive hotel we stayed in our whole road trip.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the per night thing. And their downtown is exactly all of those storefronts that you saw in the settlement. Very, like, lodge looking, very not rustic, but like more ski chalet, kind of like Lake Geneva, kind of like, I was trying to give it like a local context. But anyway, it's all of those, and everything's very expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of tourist stuff to do there, but there were plenty of, like, boutiques and money. There's a lot of money in Jackson Hole. Like the Kardashians go there to go skiing is basically, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So
now that would have been some really brilliant casting.
It would have been. So I just thought it was... No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
If they could have had, like, Khloe Kardashian, like, she happened to be there when the pandemic hit, and so she survived, right?
Yeah.
And so have her walking around going like, I can't believe there's no internet.
Yeah. Why can't I check my phone? I just thought it was interesting because, to me, because I had that experience with Jackson, it's interesting to see an area that is previously known as like we're talking spas and expensive, like, boutiques and things like that. And now it's sort of this, I like how Maria was like, we live on a commune. We're communists, you know, and she's not wrong. You know, everything is shared and everything is equal. It is. It's the basis of, but it's like friendly. communism, I suppose.
Well, of course, yeah, for right now.
For now, until it falls apart. But I just
I-
thought it was interesting that something where everybody's on an equal playing field, where everything is shared, where there's this like sort of grassroots utopian society is set against this like absolute like like white people like she spa in the mountains, spend a she weekend in $1,000 retreats to go skiing, and all of this stuff. To me it was this fantastic sort of like play on the way the world was before, and now the world is completely different in so many ways, and here's a really good example of we will never be that thing again. We're going to be this new thing. So I thought it was really interesting. I really liked the choice of Jackson, because they could have gone with anything else. They could have been in Cody or Laramie or any of the other towns that they talked about, Cheyenne or whatever. But this is like, Jackson is like, this is, it has its place and they chose it, and it to me, I thought it makes a statement. I just thought it was really cool. Loved it.
Yeah, again, you're right. I mean, the last time I was in Jackson, I was like 11, so my memories are not quite as crisp as yours.
Were you going to Yellowstone when you went there?
Oh yeah, we did the whole
Yeah.
the whole tour in the camper thing, with the family. So we went to Yellowstone, we went to Wall, South Dakota, we went to the Grand Canyon, we went to Devil's Tower. I mean, all of those things, Mount Rushmore, it was one of those, like, we took like 3-4 weeks and kind of drove around the central and western states of the United States. It was kind of an incredible trip, really cool. But we stopped there, and I remember stopping there, but I don't remember that much specific stuff about it.
Sure.
But and I can tell you, not to burst the bubble, but that is not in the game. So.
Oh, I didn't think so, but I figured. I did hear that there is a group, but they're not in like an open sort of town like that. They're more in an interior thing, like.
Yeah, they most of the when you meet Tommy in the game, most of it takes place at the hydroelectric plant.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and they have a settlement. They have families. Tommy has Maria. He's married, and so he kind of has those commitments, which is why when Joel wants him to take Ellie, he's kind of like, I really can't do that, and so on. But it's not like the whole town aspect and like the Christmas and all the stuff that they kind of showed, like in the almost like the before time, that was never present. But again, in the game, you get to the hydroelectric plant, you meet Tommy, there's a cutscene, and then immediately like raiders attack the hydroelectric plant, and you have this big shootout with like 20 raiders, so they don't have time to do all that stuff. It's just like, nope, we're gonna let you kill people. So yeah. That's interesting. I liked that they made their little settlement sort of all of the good things that we've seen in post-apocalyptic shows that have worked. Whenever you see something and you're like, will that? Like on Walking Dead, once they made it towards a certain point, it was these things that worked. They have an elected committee at this camp here in Last of Us, right. And it's not one person in charge, and they decide things by committee, which I think is smart, because then you don't end up with like the dictatorship feel. Then it's more like people. All of their resources are shared, and all of their tasks are shared too. And Maria made a comment about how they rotate tasks and things like that. So, which is very, I don't want to say democratic. It's more communistic, but it is a commune. All hands, many hands make light work and all of that. But I thought it was really cool. This sort of, they're presenting it as we're doing. It's almost like this too good to be true. Yes. We're making it, everything's perfect, Hey,
which means there's going to be something later.
communism on paper is perfect and amazing, and then when you apply human beings to it, it falls apart. So
Of course.
and as soon as human greed sets in, and then suddenly the person that's in charge of growing the vegetables takes a couple extra for them because, who's gonna know, right?
Yeah.
And they deserve it, damn it, because they're out there picking the weeds out and so on. And you know what I mean? It's like those little things that start adding up, and then when you find out that, oh wait, I'm hoarding strawberries, well, that's not fair. I'm gonna kill you. And so what I mean? It's just they're little things that will eventually cause it to self-destruct. But you're right. It's certainly on what we were presented here. It looked idyllic, and that it was working. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah. So obviously he's reunited with Tommy, which was a really emotional and affecting scene.
Mm-hmm.
They have their moment where they're sort of catching up while they're also shoveling food in their mouths.
Oh man, do those two eat fast or what?
Yeah. Well, you have to kind of think about it too. You're like, I need to eat this fast because it may be taken away from me, or something may happen and I may not be able to finish it. Like I'll have to go man the gates or go kill some infected. I better eat this while I can.
And on top of it, they're probably really hungry.
I would assume so, yes. Yeah.
And then doesn't Ellie say something like, this is like the first, home cooked meal I've ever had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to think that like a meal with multiple side dishes and so on that's hand prepared probably is the first time she hasn't eaten something that was either a very, very small portion of something or something that came out of a ration pack or something, right?
Yeah, or something that was shot and killed, and it's like, we can eat the rabbit, but we don't have anything else to go with it.
Yeah. And nothing to flavor it with and all that. And again, have you ever seen a rabbit? I mean, there's not a lot of meat on that.
Nope. So, I've eaten rabbit. There's not a lot of meat on that.
No. So like, doesn't she say like we should have taken both rabbits or something at one point? And Joel's like, no, we can catch our own rabbits.
Get our own rabbits.
He's like, are you gonna teach me? He just kind of gives her that no.
Yeah, their back and forth is just hilarious.
Yeah.
They're like a comedy duo, except he's not trying to be funny, but he ends up being funny. It's hilarious. Yeah, so they have it was interesting because they're having their moment there, and I thought probably one of the most interesting moments was when, Maria was staying there and listening in and what have you, and Joel eventually is like kind of uncomfortable because I know he wants to talk to Tommy about, basically like, what the fuck, man? Why haven't you, whatever? And he's like, thanks so much for everything you've done for us. Like, if you don't mind, we'd love to just like have some family time. And then it's like, she is family. We're married. And I'm gonna, and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So that I thought that was interesting. This
Pedro
great way
Pascal,
to share news.
If he ever thought about doing a face plant, that was the time for it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, hand slap.
Yeah. Oh.
They sort of, they catch up a little bit. They wrap up, their sort of conversation, and it's decided, we'll try, we'll get you a home. We'll give you there's an empty one that's across the street from ours, blah, blah, blah. And, get some fresh clothes for you. And I'm sure you need a shower and blah, blah, blah. So they go off and they go to do that. They sort of separate off. And there's this great moment where Ellie comes out of the shower and there's a stack of fresh clothes for her. And you can block your ears if you want for just a hot moment, but I'm going to talk about how cool it is that they included this, which is women practicalities in the apocalypse, like a diva cup. A diva cup is for menstruating women. Thank you very much. And Ellie looks at it, realizes what it is, figures it out, is so excited about it. And let me tell you, it is the perfect thing to have in the apocalypse. Sorry, Steve. It basically, if no one knows what it is, it's a little cup. You bend the edges like she showed you and insert, and it catches everything. And then you pull it out, you empty it, you put it back in, refill. Now, obviously, nobody's making tampons and pads in the apocalypse.
She had a whole box of them.
She found, but now you know why she was so excited to find them, because she needed them. Because they don't make those anymore. And other than that, you got to figure it out. So that is such a practical thing. I'm sure that there are women out there who saw that and went, yes, so smart. So yeah, I appreciate that they included that, especially this is a show that's written by and show run by a man. So to have something that's it's very female specific, I thought that was a really great choice there. So thanks, Craig Mazin, for including the Diva Cup. Women across America and across the world, thank you.
Okay. Message brought to you by women.
Women. Yeah. All right. So there's a great scene after Ellie's finished with her shower. Yes, obviously the Diva Cup. When she's downstairs and Maria comes back, they have.
Well, she goes across the street to their house. Because remember, Maria leaves the note that says, "I'm across the street."
Oh yeah. So she goes to their place.
So, yeah.
So when she gets sorry. I misremembered that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So when she gets over there, there's a little chalkboard that's kind of like a memorial. Mm-hmm. And it says Kevin and some dates, and it says Sarah and some dates. And you only see it for a hot second. And then there's, Maria often offers, she's like, can I get you a haircut? And she's like, no, I don't want a haircut. She's like, no, let me trim the edges. It looks pretty
just the tips.
Just the tips or whatever, So while and this is it's a great crafted scene. There's always good information that comes out when someone's getting their hair done. Ask any hairdresser. So there's some conversation going back and forth about Joel and Tommy and trust and who not to trust. And it sounds like Maria knows what Tommy and Joel used to do. And she's worried for Ellie because she doesn't know if Ellie knows. But Ellie's like, no, they used to kill people. Big deal. He doesn't do that anymore. She's very like, she because she needs Joel. So she's willing to look the other way on stuff he's done before. Plus, none of us are angels. So, Maria's got this concern, this like parental concern. But I think she also is worried because I gather that she's probably worried Joel will want to like get Tommy involved in his capers again or something like that. Like she's got Tommy. We find out in a later scene that she's actually pregnant. So she has a lot of personal things at stake with having Joel come in and sort of like upset, the apple cart a little bit by being here.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of that conversation sort of happening. But I it's very interesting because when she says something about, and I'm pretty sure it says Kevin. My brain thinks it's either Kevin or Keith. That's on that.
It was Kevin. Kevin was her son, and his date was somewhere in 2003 as well as Sarah's.
Yeah. Someone, an eagle-eyed person said that the date was 2 days after the fall.
Okay.
So he obviously must have been infected or something happened, whatever. So she said something about.
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, Ellie says, "I'm sorry about your kids," and she goes,
right.
"Well, just Kevin was my son, Sarah was Joel's," and then literally Ellie kind of goes.
She's like,
oh. Yeah, and then and Maria's smart cookie, right? She's a former district attorney, so she's used to reading people and body language and stuff, and she immediately goes, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that,"
Yeah, she gets it right away, but she's also good at going down a path with a conversation and hoping to sort of gain a result. So, but yeah, I don't think she was expecting Ellie to not know that.
Yeah. But
it was great because Ellie was basically like, I didn't know that, but she says, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It puts a lot of other things into perspective about how he is and how standoffish, and and you can see her take every moment she's had with him and play through it in her head when she's had those like, oh my God, just come on, why won't you laugh or engage with me or whatever, and she got her answer right there.
Yep.
And it's all, yeah. So yeah, I love that. It was the haircut that gave all kinds of information. And it started with her looking at that memorial sign, but then it led to this conversation that, they both got new things, new information. They both sort of stuck up for each other, for their respective person. Like Ellie was sticking up for Joel, Maria was sticking up for Tommy. They're sort of staked to their claim on, like, they're not saying anything bad about Joel or about Tommy, but they're basically saying, how can you trust them? And, and she makes that really great line about trust, which you put in there.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a split scene, really, because while Ellie is showering and doing all this stuff, Joel is off talking with Tommy.
That's right. And there's a lot of stuff going on there, too.
Yeah, and they go into the bar, right? And they're, pouring, and you kind of get the sense that the liquor that's in the bottle, they, like, made themselves.
Probably.
Because, and Tommy's like, now, next thing I got to do is get some hogs, start farming hogs, and then we can have bacon, and then we got everything.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really great that Joel is asking Tommy to come with, and that's when Tommy says that Maria's pregnant, and that he's worried about being a dad, and then he can't because he has responsibilities and so on, and when he tells Joel that he's pregnant, and he goes, I'm worried if I'm going to be a good dad, and I think Joel's answer is like, well, I guess we'll find out. And Tommy's like, that's it? That's all you have to say? And then he just looks at him stands up to him and goes, just because life stopped for you doesn't mean that it has to stop for me. And, what a line, right?
Yes.
And then storms off, right? And leaving Joel to kind of stew in his own juices there. But then it cuts back to Maria and Ellie. And, of course, Maria's trying, like you said, going down the road of, like, how much do you really know about Joel? Do you really trust him? Do you really think he's the guy to keep you safe?
Right.
And, of course, as you said, Ellie is just, like, I do trust him. He is the guy that'll keep me safe. He has saved my life and all this stuff. And then Sarah comes up, and that answers a lot of questions for Ellie.
Sure does.
And then Maria says something like, you learn a really good lesson, and that is, be careful. You can't open up to everyone. You can't trust everyone, because then she says the only people who can betray us are the ones we trust. And again, almost you kind of thinking she's trying to almost plant some doubts in Ellie about Joel.
Yeah,
I'm sure solely on what Tommy has told her about Joel.
Right. And you got to figure too, the way I was looking at that was, you've got to figure that Tommy has probably been somewhat forthcoming to Maria about the things they've done. Mm-hmm. But I guarantee that he's tried to make himself appear
better.
Exactly. Doesn't want to scare her. So he's probably not taking full responsibility for everything they've done. And he probably has painted a picture of, well, my big brother, yada, yada. Yeah. So, like, painting it as, like, well, I wouldn't have if he hadn't. And, however he's played it, so makes Joel look, unfortunately, a little worse. And he's probably like, well, she's never going to meet Joel, so I don't have to worry about how I paint him. And then, shit, he walked through the door.
What the hell? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally got the sense that the whole reason that Maria brings that conversation up to Ellie is because asking Tommy about what the life with Joel was like, whenever there was something bad that they had to do, killing innocent people or whatever, it was always Tommy was following Joel because Joel was the bigger brother and the guy in charge, the leader, whatever. And basically Tommy's in the exact same position that Ellie's in right now, that she is following Joel's orders and doing what Joel says needs to be done. And Maria, based on what she's been told, knows that can lead to some really bad stuff.
Of course.
And so, yeah, that's why she's like, you should really be careful. Yeah. And Ellie is just like, go away. She doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So they go to the movies.
Yeah, you might as well. I mean, that's what I would do in the apocalypse.
Oh, exactly. Although before that moment happens, Tommy does that killer line about Sarah, just because life stopped, and then he storms off, and then Joel kind of walks out into the street, and there's a scene by the Christmas tree, and he sees a young woman who would be like in her late 20s, mid 20s maybe, from behind, and she has the same kind of hair as Sarah.
Yeah.
And it's almost that they do all the tricks to get you. They run it a little in slow motion, and they play the music, and clearly he's like, I don't think he actually thinks it's her completely, but I think he looks at that woman and goes, that's what Sarah would be if she was around,
Yes, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, and so then of course he has that kind of like, oh wow, and then he starts to kind of move in closer, and then you see like a little girl runs up to that woman, and so you see she has a child. So then Joel's like, oh my God, that could be my grandchild, and then the woman kind of turns a little bit, and you can tell it's obviously not her. It's not Sarah. But that just hits even harder for Joel. And we kind of find out Joel is terrified of failing here.
Yes.
And he remember when they leave the lodge where Marlon and Florence are, he like has to like grab onto the fence post for a minute and kind of catch his breath. Yep. And so he's almost like having like physical episodes.
Yeah.
Because this is weighing on him so much that he's just convinced that it's going to happen again.
Yeah. I think the way they painted those scenes, I think like physically they're expecting people to look at that and go, ooh, health. Is his health okay? Is his heart okay? Mm-hmm. And I didn't read that at all. To me, I was like, is he having a panic attack?
It's a panic attack. Yeah. Oh, I get that too. Although he does tell Tommy, right, when they're having their talk. Yeah. And this comes later on when he's trying to fix his boots, remember? And then Tommy comes in and gives him the new pair. He is completely blunt about, just recently in Kansas City, Ellie had to shoot somebody to save his life. And he's like, 5 years ago, I would have killed that kid easy. And I didn't this time because I can't hear very well and I'm slower than I used to be. And just pointing out that physically he's just wore out. And he's just like, I know if we keep going, eventually I'm going to fail her and she's going to die.
Yeah, he's embarrassed almost. He feels like he's just not the guy to help her anymore. Right.
And he's like, you're younger than I am. You can still do this. You can complete this mission. And he even brings up Tess. He's like, look, the only reason I'm doing this is it's her dying wish. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
I mean, can't say no, right? And so again, some really, really powerful stuff going on there. But that sequence with Sarah was when he thinks he sees Sarah, and it just brings home all that other stuff you're going to find out when he starts talking about why he is so quick to dump off Ellie. It's not that he doesn't like her. It's not that he doesn't think that she could be the cure and all that stuff. It's that he is just convinced that he can't do it, that he will, is not going to be able to complete that mission, and he can't. His psyche, he cannot handle losing another person like that he cares about. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm curious too, like in the midst of all of these little moments that Joel has with Tommy, he reveals the thing about becoming a dad and that he has a fear around that. So, there's that. And I think that that's a valid thing that we're seeing Tommy display. But I'm curious how you feel about, I feel like there's more there. That Tommy's worried about something else. And I don't mean like a big bad something else, like something huge, something, some big plot point, but if there's like maybe some other smaller, things. My first thought, because I go to the negative, because we're so used to, there's always like some bad person in a development like this or whatever, like is there someone who could make life bad for them in this development? Do you know what I mean? Like, could someone lean on Tommy and Maria like, oh, well, your brother's no good. If he comes back, we're gonna have to kill him or what, you know what I mean? Because I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I had this sense that there was another underlying fear for Tommy. And I don't think it makes Maria bad. I don't think there's anything there. I can't describe it. There's just like I just had this sense that there was another layer to Tommy's fear. And I'm curious if you didn't see that, sounds like you didn't get that, but I'm curious if listeners let us know, like, did you get that sense, or am I just hopped up on cold medications, or could it be both?
Well, I
did you see that? And I am also hopped up on it.
I mean, first of all, yes, obviously you are. I mean,
clearly.
You've called me Martha 4 times so far before we started recording, so yes, you are. But I think also, like you said, you're kind of, I don't want to say ruined, but I would say like spoiled maybe by shows like this.
Right.
That you've already seen and you've digested and dissected and analyzed, because that's what we talk about on this darn podcast. So you're expecting
for there to be more
happen.
Layers to something, rather than it be like the simplest explanation.
Yeah. I just on the surface, when I saw that scene, my thought was, first of all, I think every parent to be has that, oh my God, am I going to be any good at this?
Right.
Because you're basing it based on what your parents did, good and bad, and also what you got away with as a kid that your parents, as far as had no idea you were doing. You know what I mean? So you have all these different things like, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? There's no manual. What do I do? And then you add on top of that fear, you're not only trying to just raise a kid, which is hard enough, you're trying to raise a kid in that world.
Yeah. There's a lot of worries there.
Yeah. So and you're right. That's the simplest explanation, but there certainly could be layers. And again, there is a season 2 coming.
Right.
So you never know. These might be plot seeds that are being thrown out here for it, when they do get beyond the video game storyline that they could go back to. So, I think it's very, very real chance you could be right, that this could be maybe a setting for some of season 2 or season 3 or whatever. And we'll get into more of how this community works. And maybe there are, some evil forces stirring, and maybe people are wanting to take over or whatever. And now, again, not just, they could put leverage on Tommy with Joel. They could put leverage on Tommy because he has a kid.
That's totally true. True. So it could be nothing, could be something. I just, and maybe just the actor was being very empathetic to, I'm being a first-time father, and I know my brother has trauma around losing his daughter, and so that's possible. Yeah. That he's just being worried, and like you said, it's not just about like having a kid. Having a kid in the apocalypse is like a totally new thing.
Oh God, yeah.
So
I mean, it's not only is it a new experience for you because for a first-time parent because you've never raised a child, but think about it. The entire way you were raised is really not an option anymore.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. Nothing exists the way it did when we were kids.
Yeah,
any of these people are thinking those same things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you can't give your kid the your phone to play with to keep them quiet. You can't. Yeah, although in this place maybe there is a school, but there isn't school like we had school, right? And,
Right.
all of that. I mean, it's just so many little things that if you think back to when you were a kid that you could do that you can't do in this world just because you can't. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, so yeah, I think that right there would cause a lot of fear, and also just fear of like, what are their medical resources like? And so what if there's an issue at the birth, and
That's
what
true.
if, what I mean? There's so many things, everybody worries about, is your baby going to be healthy? Is going to have all their fingers and toes and all that stuff? And if there is a problem, does that community have the resources to cope with it, or, are you in trouble? I mean, there's so many things that I'm sure are weighing on them. And then on top of that, here comes Joel, who he hasn't seen in 20 years, the first thing Joel says is, hey, by the way, would you mind taking this kid you just met, 200 miles away for me? You know what I mean? It's like, oh God, more pressure,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on Tommy. So it could just be that. So I recognize that. That's for sure. But the one interesting thing that comes out of that whole conversation, that final conversation with Tommy and Joel, is, Joel's pretty much like, you need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
This needs to happen, which then manifests into a scene with Joel and Ellie where he literally walks through the door and she's like, basically she reads him right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, so you're ditching me, right? When are you ditching me, or whatever? She's just ready for it,
Well, you get the sense that she left the movie and somehow found where they were and kind of overheard some of the conversation. Now, we don't see that, but he asked her, he's like, how much did you hear? And she said, I heard you say you were afraid of losing me. And
that's right.
So she definitely kind of was there as a third member of that conversation. So she is very angry, as you would imagine, with him, and just lets him have it.
Yeah. She's angry she has every right to be, and she states her case. She does her whole thing where she's like, I'm not her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Sarah, and it's okay and whatever. And he was like, he's like, you're right, I'm not your dad. I'm nobody to you, pretty much. And he's like, and tomorrow, come dawn, we'll be going our separate ways.
Yeah.
And he just leaves. You're like, holy shit.
Oh yeah. Well, when she uses the S word, you can see
crossed the line.
Yeah, you can see that he's like, yeah, we do not talk about that.
Yeah.
But she does. You're right. She makes a really, big point of, look, I'm not her, and what happened to her, is not going to happen to me, or, I'm going to try really hard for that not to happen to me. You know what I mean? So we have to keep going, and it just revs him up to where the way he ends that conversation when he goes, you're right. You're not my daughter, and I sure as hell am not your dad.
Yeah.
And that, I think that line really landed with Ellie, who clearly has huge abandonment issues.
Yeah.
And and doesn't she even bring that point up? She's like, because he's like, you don't know anything about loss. Right. And she goes, really? She's like, every person in my entire life that I've ever liked or cared for has left me. So don't tell me I don't know about law. It's a great scene. It really is. And the two of them are really good in it. And I can tell you that scene is in the video game.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a slight difference because in the game, you fight off all the guys that are attacking the hydroelectric plant, and then when you finish that, Tommy and Joel have a scene where Joel like wants Tommy to take her, and Tommy agrees, and the whole I'm married, have a kid thing. It might be in there, but it's a different context, and it's not nearly as confrontational as it is here. And Ellie overhears that, and so she takes a horse and tries to run away. And so then they go after her, and eventually you find her, and she's in this like ranch house very far away from the settlement. And you go and you see her horse out front. So then you go in and you go upstairs to one of the bedrooms, and she's in there and she's reading the diary that was there. And that's where she says, is that what people worried about back then? Was, what skirt goes with what, what blouse, and who's going to ask who to the dance and all that. And they have that kind of, confrontation in this like strange bedroom that he finds her in. And it's almost word for word in that, she brings up Sarah and he tells her don't, and you don't know anything about loss. And then, what do you mean? I know all about loss. My whole freaking life is loss and all that. And then it ends literally with him going, tomorrow morning, you're going with Tommy, and that's it. And we're going our separate ways. And again, and it is just, it's just a killer scene. I mean, you feel bad for both of them, right?
For sure. And it's great because you just don't know which way it's going to go. And then she wakes up in the morning, she gets all of her things ready, she's got her pack ready, and she's sitting in her coat with her pack and her hat on, and she's ready to go. She can hear footsteps, and the door opens, and it's Tommy.
And she's really expecting at first, and then she's like, oh.
But she doesn't cry, she doesn't make any noise. She's like, let's go. And she walks right past him. She's ready to, she's had her emotional moment. You see that happen, like when that happened with Sam. She takes that emotion and she can set it aside, and she's like, okay, we need to move on to the next thing, because I can't lose myself right now, because I'm all I have. So if I fall apart, then there's nothing there. So they head down to the stable, and there's Joel, and he's putting a saddle on a horse, like it looks like he's ready to go somewhere. My first instinct was, I was like, oh, so they're both leaving at exactly the same time. This is kind of weird. And then Tommy's like, he's like, what's going on? And Joel says, well, I was going to steal a horse. And Tommy's like, hello, I was going to get one for you to borrow. And he's like explaining himself. And he says, yeah, I got here about 30 minutes ago, and I was going to steal a horse and leave. And yet I'm still here. And I'm I haven't gone anywhere yet. And he looks at Ellie and he's like, it's down to you. It's your choice. He's basically saying, he's like, I basically, I think you're better off with Tommy, but when it comes down to it, the choice is yours. And as soon as he finishes the line, she shoves her bag into Joel's hands, and she's like, let's go.
She's like, Joel, I'm going with Joel.
That's it. Like, that's my choice.
Yeah.
And it's great because I think in that moment, I think Tommy is relieved. I don't think Tommy wanted to do this at all.
No.
Tommy is relieved. I think there's a part of Joel that's relieved too, because Ellie has become more and more important to him, whether he wants to admit it or not. And Ellie is just like, let's just get going, because like all of this emotion with you drama queens, like we got stuff to do. But I like that her way of picking Joel was kind of very gruff. Like these two, I mean, I don't know that it happens down the road, but these two are not going to hug it out, not anytime soon. Not based on how they are and the kind of armor that they both put up. So I think in Ellie's case, her throwing the bag in his arms was her version of like, the girl that like slaps you on the arm or like pushes you and is like, come on, and there was that girl. There was the one actress that appeared on Friends as a girlfriend of Joey's or something, and she'd like punch him in the shoulder, and he's like, ow, it hurts.
It really hurts.
But she'd do it playfully. And I think that's what Ellie's doing. It's like that playful, like, here, take this huge heavy bag, pushes it on him. And she's like, okay, I choose you. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You won the Ellie sweepstakes.
Yeah, she's the kind of person that, like, she'd pick the person she wants to go to the prom with and be like, okay, I'm going with you. High five. Let's get out of here. You know what I mean?
Let's go. That's right.
Yeah.
No funny stuff.
Absolutely no funny stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thought that was a great moment. She chooses Joel. It was her version of like the Bachelorette and handing off a rose. Was please
Who
carry
will
this
get the
heavy.
blue bag tonight?
You who will get it? It was Joel.
Mhm.
Yay! I choose you.
Mhm.
So they leave to go. Tommy said that the Fireflies are at this college, which is, X amount of miles away. He gives them some sort of rough directions. You get to this place, you get to Route 25, and you go from there. So that's where they're headed because the whole point is to drop Ellie with the Fireflies. That's what this whole journey has been. And they're just trying to find a big group of Fireflies. So they head towards this college, and when they get there, it's pretty deserted. It doesn't give any sort of outward appearance of anything sort of happening there. So I mean, I don't know about you, but like their initial instinct, I'm not sure I would have stayed.
You would not have pushed ahead to try and get her to the scientists?
I don't I don't know. Like, did you? I don't know. I think it just, and yes, they did have that one sign that had the Firefly symbol
Mm-hmm.
painted on there. So that was one little moment of hope. But I think once they started heading towards that building and it didn't look like anybody was in there,
And the
it,
guard posts were deserted, and
yeah, it's not even so much that it was deserted, but it didn't look like anyone had even walked through there recently. Because like there were papers and things on the ground, and like
mm-hmm.
it didn't look like anyone had walked through or pushed those papers aside. I don't know, just it had such a deserted feel to it. It gave me the creeps, and I was like, this is not good. So it was just curious that Joel, like his instincts didn't kick in. I know that they're sort of in this search mode, and they have been since day one, so I get it. They're just like looking, but I don't know. It just gave me a bad feeling right off the bat. How about you?
Well, I was a little spoiled because this is something straight out of the game.
Damn
I
it.
know. See again, so a lot of stuff that you're saying in my head, I'm like, oh, I could totally like blow her mind, but I'm just gonna keep my
Please
mouth
don't.
shut. Yeah, right. I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, in the show or in the game, I should say, they go to the University of Eastern Colorado, and I
Okay.
want to say that the mascot are the Rams, if I'm remembering right, which is
Okay.
different because here they were I don't know, the bison or the buffalo or something. I can't remember what they were, but and pretty much what happens in the show is again straight out of the game. They get there, they see the Firefly signs on the outskirts of the university, but they don't see any people, and so they decide, well, they're probably in the center because it's
Right.
safer. And so
Right.
as they push in, they come into the quad and they see all the monkeys. And
That's right.
that's a scene that's straight out of the game, which was really cool. I'm like, the monkeys, and they go inside, and again, in terms of gameplay, as you're moving around in the game, you find lots of letters and journals and notes and things that have been left by people.
Oh.
And at this particular place, you find several of those like little hand tape recorders,
Oh.
like those little things you would click, record, and then you could, record your inner thoughts
Oh,
on
like a
what.
dictaphone kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a handheld thing. It's not like something that's on a desk. It's one of those little teeny things.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you find several of them that you can play, and the batteries still work. And you hear that in the game, you actually hear of some voice that they brought in to record whatever was being said, and you learn that there was a Firefly base there, and there were doctors there, and they were working on a cure and doing all this stuff. And eventually they decided to evacuate it to another base, and I can't remember if it was in Salt Lake City or not. I think it was in the game. And so that happened like several months prior to when Joel and Ellie get there.
Okay.
So basically this base that Tommy had heard of had been abandoned for several months. by the time that they get there. And that is all straight out of the game. And the scene when they go upstairs and the two monkeys are kind of ransacking the one room and then they all jump out the window, that's straight out of the game, which is great. And then, of course, the guys show up, the bad guys show up. The big difference is because it's a video game, there's like 100 of them, and you're shooting at them and you're fighting in the building and, you're throwing test tubes at them and hiding under science tables and all kinds of stuff like that is going on, as opposed to what we see in the show where it's just the one guy that they confront and then they get on a horse and are able to get away from the other three guys that were there. So, right. But yeah, that is straight out of the video game. So it did not surprise me that, there's nobody there, because that's how it's supposed to happen in the game. So, But you're right. It is definitely a creepy setting. Any of those places that any of these apocalyptic shows give us, when it's a place that we know normally should be crowded with people.
Yeah.
And when they're not, it's unsettling.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe because it just was so.
Yeah.
And you still get used to that, seeing places like you said that you usually filled with, and they weren't. So it could have been partially that too.
Yeah, and then like you said too, when they go inside the building, it's a mess and there's papers strewn all over the place and junk everywhere. And again, that's not normal. We're not used to that, and so that immediately makes you go, this isn't right, and you're part of your brain goes, no, this should. That's why you kind of get that weird feeling, that creepy feeling, because your brain is telling you this is not how this should be.
And I wonder too, like in terms of like the cognitive dissonance between two things, I wonder how I would have felt about it if they had not found the Tommy location in between. If they'd gone from Kansas City to like, we're traveling, now it's 3 months later. Oh, and we heard tell that there might be fireflies in this college, because Kansas City, while they had some structure happening, it was a city, it was kind of messy and there were papers strewn and it wasn't like immaculate there or whatever. But you went from like regular, like Kansas City, then you went to Utopia in Jackson Hole, where you're telling me if there was no snow on the ground, there wouldn't have been a speck of dust anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And then you go from, I think going from the Jackson Hole place to the college is really what made it. It's such a stark contrast.
Yeah.
It felt cold and deserted, like you were saying, and there should have been people there and they weren't. And because we came from a place that was clean and organized and well put together, that just even the disorganization, which is normal in the apocalypse, it's normal in Kansas City, normal in Boston, that normalcy looked out of place because of where we had just been.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah. And remember, you get this little conversation while they're riding on the horse and they're kind of working their way into the college, where Ellie's like, so what, people would come here and live here and study? And Joel's like, well, yeah, that, and they'd party and they kind of figure out, who they are and what they want to do with their lives. And Ellie just kind of chuckles at like, what are they going to do with their lives? Like, just trying to imagine a world where that was like even a thing.
Yeah, where you could just pick something.
Yeah, and it was normal for large groups to be together, and it was okay, and you didn't have to worry about, them trying to eat you and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for us, the audience, when he is saying that, that's bringing to the forefront of our minds the idea that, colleges are supposed to be jam-packed with people.
Yeah. And
hustle and bustle and lots of activity and all this stuff. And here they are. And again, it's as quiet as a tomb. Yeah. Right. And the only sign of life that you get at all in that whole place are those lab monkeys.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're running around loose, that's not a good sign either.
Yeah. And that they're running around loose, but they're also staying close to the campus. They haven't
Yeah.
been like sort of driven off.
Right.
Not a good sign.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So the way that they stack that scene, it's supposed to make you go, this is not right. We got to get out of here.
Exactly. But they stay.
Of course.
The Raiders come. They get into a fight.
Mm-hmm.
He does kill one of them, and as he gets up from the fight, he realizes he like I think was he standing and he turned to Ellie. I forget the reveal of like the wooden piece that was in him. He just sort of like turns to Ellie and it's like, oh my God, Joel. And it's the guy attacked him with a baseball bat.
Yes.
And it's the top of the baseball bat, the handle of the baseball bat sort of broken off, and it jabbed into Joel's
midsection. Yeah.
Midsection there. Yeah.
A good like 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah. He the guy comes up and swings the bat, and Joel ducks and he hits a tree that they had tied the horse reins to.
Yeah.
And the baseball bat breaks. It shatters in the guy's hand. So then he's holding that handle kind of like it's now become kind of like a de facto knife.
Right.
And you can see it because on the second time through, I watched it a little more closely, and Joel and the guy then kind of like embrace almost, and you see the guy stab him right there, and then Joel kind of does a swim move and spins the guy around, and then he gives him the chokehold, and then he snaps his neck. And after he drops him to the ground, then he turns around, like you said, and that's when Ellie's like, Joel. and then Joel does I sense a rant coming on here, very similar to my rant from last week about cutting your hand open with a knife. I believe you have one you're going to make right now.
Oh, it's not so much a rant, but it does happen a lot in shows. And the thing is if someone is impaled with something, you are actually better off. You should leave it in, because the part of your body that it has cut, you are actually already creating pressure on that wound by holding that piece in there. If you pull it out, you have now taken away some of that pressure, and it's gonna, don't get me wrong, if he kept it in, he was still gonna bleed. He'd probably have gotten weak. It might have, and the thing is the pain, because it might still be like pokey stabby on the inside there.
Is that a medical term?
It's in the anatomy books. Pokey stabby.
I'm so sorry, ma'am, but your husband is still definitely suffering from pokey stabby.
So it seems counterintuitive, but it's actually proven. Like they tell you in an emergency, that's why when you see people get put into an ambulance that have like an arrow or whatever, they leave it in.
Yeah.
They put you in the ambulance, they leave it in, they bring you to the hospital, then they remove it, because as soon as they remove it, then you're going to start to gush blood, and they can handle it there.
Right. They have the facilities to deal with.
Ellie doesn't know first aid.
No. But Joel pulls it out.
But Joel should know better.
Yeah.
It disappointed me, because he would have lasted a little bit longer. They might have made it back to you have to assume that they probably are trying to get back to Tommy's place, right?
Because those guys were chasing them, I think they were just trying to get away.
True. But you would think like the only place we know of where we can get to, whether it's for medical or not medical attention, is in this direction.
Yeah, but it's like 5-6 days away. I mean, Tommy is a long way away from, and you think that Joel will need some attention sooner than that. But yeah, I mean, I got the sense that they get on the horse, and the 3 other guys because we see the 4 guys, they see them, they look out the window and they see the 4 guys. And then the one guy is there, Joel kills him. Then the other 3 guys are running on foot. Thank goodness they don't have a car or a horse themselves. So Joel and Ellie get up on the horse and they just kind of gallop away. And I really got the sense that they were just like, let's just get far enough away so these guys aren't following us anymore.
That's true. Yeah, because like you said, they've got the horse and the Raider guys don't.
Yeah.
They don't have any kind of transportation like that.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that's probably true. Probably true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not so much a rant. I'm not gonna go wacko over it. But yes,
It's okay. You can go a little wacko.
I mean, in some instances, you have no choice. Like in Walking Dead, when Rick fell on that piece of rebar, there were zombies coming, so he had to get up and go away.
Right.
But if there was no zombies coming towards Rick, he would have been better off staying on that piece of rebar like shouting for help.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna bleed out.
And in the really real world, if that were to happen, or someone were to impale themselves like that, and the paramedics would come, most likely they would cut the rebar off of whatever it's attached to and keep it
in you.
In you. And again, like you said, transport you to a hospital where they are ready to, give you lots of blood, and they have the surgical capabilities to stop stitch you up and stop the bleeding and all that stuff. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And it is a pet peeve with me too, because it is a standard thing in film that, I got stabbed, well, I'm gonna pull that out. And it's like, what are you doing? So yeah. You almost wonder in this instance if Joel pulled it out partially because he didn't realize how deep it was in.
Maybe.
Because it wasn't like it was a knife, you know what I mean? It was just the end of the bat, and so maybe he's like, oh, well, maybe if it's only in just a little bit, and then when, holy crap, it's like 3-4 inches, now we have a real problem,
Yeah.
But again, you're right. You think if he would have not done that, he might have been able to remain conscious for a little while longer than he does in this. Because you're right, they kind of get away, and Ellie kind of goes, I don't think they're following us, and then he just takes a header off the horse.
Yeah, he sure do. And why is it that whenever someone has some kind of, they're hurt on the midsection, they're on a horse and they fall down, and it's really like the falling off of the horse is probably more painful than what has actually happened to him.
Right.
So I don't know. That's another trope, the whole falling off the horse.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought he was going to have Ellie be on the horse, and he was going to walk beside it, with the gun, keep an eye out, you stay on the horse and I will keep an eye. I don't know. I don't know why I thought he wasn't going to get on the horse, but I just had this feeling.
Okay.
But so he does. He falls off the horse, of course. And
is it Mr. Ed?
No. Wilbur. And there's this great scene, and Ellie is she's just
freaking out.
Yeah, she really is. She's losing it big time, as she would say. And she's telling him, you got to get up, Joel, let's go. Joel, come on, got to get up. And she starts to get upset, and she says, I can't fucking do this without you.
Yeah.
And I just am like, it went right through my heart. And she's crying. She's really getting up. Because it's true. You really, in that moment, as soon as she said that and got upset, I was like, she's a 14-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
She's never been outside her city walls. Now, she's learned a lot in these months she's been with Joel.
Yeah. Totally different.
She's got no resources, no nothing.
Well, and like she says, she doesn't know where she is, and she doesn't know where she's going.
Yeah. It's not good. Poor kid.
She's in big trouble. Yeah, and she's almost like pleading. She's like, please, Joel. You can't do. I half expected her to be like, I should have chosen Tommy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Crazy. I wonder if she'd gone with Tommy. Would Tommy have been like, ooh, this doesn't look like the way it did the last time I was here. We should turn around and go back.
Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows? But we'll never really know. I still think she chose the correct person, though.
Oh, well, she absolutely did. But keep in mind, too, that Tommy's directions was, well, it's 5 days, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
It's tough. There's infected, there's raiders and all this stuff, and they got there without a problem, right?
Yeah, and so that's true.
They fast traveled there. That's how much of a non-problem it was getting there, right? And To the point where Ellie is even like, well, that wasn't as bad when they come up to the I-25 sign.
Yeah.
And Joel's line is, well, there's still time to find out.
Yeah, it could still,
always the optimist, that guy.
So much room for things to really screw up from here on out. That's true.
Right, and he wasn't wrong, but
no, he was not.
Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. I think if Tommy had, whether she was just with Tommy or if Tommy maybe had gone with them, if it had been the three of them, that whole thing might have gone differently because, it's possible he had been there before, like you said, and as soon as he comes in and there aren't the guards and there aren't people where there should be people, he would be like, well, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So she has her little breakdown. She's crying, and the scene, you can tell like the scene is starting to sort of wrap up, and you're like, oh my God, is this it? Are they going to leave us with this?
Yes, they are.
And then it goes to black, and then they start playing Never Let Me Down Again, which is from the first episode. But this is a different version. It's more acoustic. It's just a piano, and it's a woman singing. And it's a little nugget of information that I found out, which is
I like the nuggets.
I love a good nugget. It's sung by Craig Mason's daughter, Jessica.
Oh, how about that?
And I just think that that's a really cool choice. I mean, to have it be sung by a girl, you made that note as well in your notes. I think for me personally, it feels like it's almost like she's the voice of Ellie. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It feels, I mean, obviously it's intentional because, Craig Mazin put it all together and then he chose his daughter to do the song. It's, it's a parental feeling. It's, the girl, it's supposed to be, the song is like from Ellie's perspective now. And it's just, I just thought it was such a beautiful little touch at the end of the episode. What did you think?
Oh, I did. I thought the same thing. I really liked it, and I did not know until I saw your notes that was Craig Mason's daughter. But what really struck me about it is when we first hear the song, it's the actual Depeche Mode song, Depeche Mode version, and to me the idea there is that with the music they're suggesting that Joel is driving this story. Right. He is the guy that's going to be making the decisions. He is the guy that's going to be, doing most of the heavy lifting. He is the guy that is, the ultimate leader going on. By having it now being sung by a girl, based on how this episode ends, that tells me by using the music to let us know that it is now Ellie that is going to be doing all the heavy lifting, and Ellie is going to be making all the decisions, and Ellie is going to be the ultimate leader because Joel is hurt.
Yeah.
He's down, he's out, he's going to need time to recover. And I even touched on this, I think, in one of our previous episodes, as one of our feedback people scolded me for, which we'll get to. There is a part in the game, and again, if they're going to follow it the way that the game is, I am so excited to hear your reaction, because some of the stuff in the game that Ellie by herself gets into is awesome and creepy and weird, and oh my God, it is so good. So hopefully they're going to do it, and since so far they have hit all the major notes of the story of the game, I don't see why they're not. So I'm really excited for what's coming up. Not maybe necessarily next week, because next week, as you kind of pointed out, is looks like more of a flashback episode. Yeah. But I'm hoping it'll be like kind of a 50-50 where we get current Ellie doing stuff and then flashback Ellie doing stuff at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible. And I think the clips that we got at the end of the episode, they can't tell us the outcome of what we just saw. Right. They can't show us clips of Joel in the next episode because it'll give things away, whether he is, severely injured and he has to convalesce for like a couple of months, or, whatever the case may be. Any image that they use will give it away. So by focusing only on this, it doesn't mean that that's just the only part of the episode.
Right.
It's just the only thing that they could show pictures of without spoiling people.
Without having everybody go crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was my take on the music, is that it's through using the music as almost a device to sort of set us up with the idea that, okay, it's been the Joel's in charge show. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the Ellie's in charge show, just due to circumstances. So yeah, again, I loved it because first of all, that song fits so well with this story.
It does.
And again, like you said, this version is a much stripped down, just one acoustic guitar and one voice. And it kind of is, to me, again, this is me in my crazy, I see way too many movies head going, well, that the music is telling us that, okay, you know what, now it's Ellie and she's by herself and she doesn't have Joel to help her.
Right.
You know, and so that the music is reflecting that. I loved it. I thought it was great. And you again, like you were saying, like, damn you, cliffhanger, right? And it was, because you literally, she's not in imminent danger, but you're just left with what she said, like, what does she do?
Yeah. What is her next step? We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the little tidbit about it being his daughter, Jessica, that was just IMDb that told me.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
it was okay.
I was just looking at some stuff for the episode, and they had some episode specific trivia on IMDb, and they had that in there. And, you wouldn't just say that. It must appear in, once the episode airs, then it's all of they can lift the embargo on, like, the interview that he did with Entertainment Weekly about this episode or whatever.
Right.
So the tidbit's out there. He either said it in an interview or something. So, yeah. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't cover?
I just
would cover yet.
Yeah, I would tell you that in the video game, Joel doesn't get stabbed; he gets shot.
Okay.
So that is obviously a difference. And again, I say again way too much. I apologize. But in the game,
spoilers. Game spoilers.
Game spoilers. But in the game, when they're in the university and they run into the monkeys and all that, it's like an army of Raider guys show up, and it's like running gun battle that you have against them, and they're all faceless, nameless bad guys, Right. And you kind of fight your way through it, and like just before you get to the exit to get it back outside to where your horse is, it goes to a cutscene where a guy comes and plugs Joel, and then suddenly you have to control Ellie and fight off that guy, and then you kind of drag Joel out and get on the horse and ride away, and so on. So Joel is shot in the game. He's not stabbed, but again, his health is very questionable. Is he going to make it? Is he not? The other thing is when in the show, when the guy attacks him and he slips behind him and does the chokehold on him and breaks his neck, that is a way Joel can kill guys in the game. So,
okay. So interesting.
If you sneak up behind both infected and just Raider bad guys, if you can sneak up on them, you can push a button and you jump up and you do the arm bar around his neck. And if it's like a clicker or something, you can just stab him right in the head and kill him. But if it's just a regular infected person or just a regular person, you can just choke the life out of them, and then they eventually stop moving and you drop them. I thought that was a nice little touch that they did that. They brought that in there. And then the only other thing that struck me was in Jackson they have like the community movie night. Mm-hmm. And the movie that they are watching on that particular night is a Richard Dreyfuss movie from the 1970s, and the title of it is called The Goodbye Girl.
Great movie.
Which is a great movie.
Great movie.
I don't think it's really appropriate for children, but that was what they chose. It's based on a Neil Simon play, and Richard Dreyfuss he's like had just made Jaws, so he's at that age, right?
Yeah.
And Marsha Mason is in it, and it's a really, really very funny adult story. I just think it's significant that that's the title of the film, particularly with Ellie.
Yeah.
That here, this girl, this is the goodbye girl. She's going to be leaving soon, and then so on. So I thought that was an interesting choice. I don't think there's anything else. No, I can't hit everything else. Yeah, again, like you said, no one facted.
Yeah.
But I thought the episode had a lot of emotional fireworks, and then of course that ending where you're like, no, I want more.
Yeah. More, please. I would like more. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything else either. Lots of great stuff to talk about. We are going to go ahead and take a quick break then, since we finished up all of our topics. And when we come back, we're going to discuss our fantastic listener feedback we got this week and what is coming up on the podcast.
All right, so stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Internet. Do you like scary movies? What about going way off the rails while discussing your favorites, like Nightmare on Elm Street?
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look
Can you
fine.
see me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you okay, Summer?
Tell us what you're seeing.
Friday the 13th. She's like, you're driving this whole thing, so it's like you're either gonna steer us to safety or you're gonna careen us all up to our death.
Either way,
I
I'm
can
fine
see
with
Summer
it.
doing a barrel roll out of a car now.
I know. Down a cliff, down some fields.
Halloween.
Exactly. Tom. And that mustache and that butt.
Oh my god.
And more. Trust me when I say that there's no movie that we can't derail right off the cliff. So come check out the Dolls of Horror podcast with your hosts, Girl on Gore Jamie and Summer of Fear. And me, producer Jesse, as we tackle all the horror movies, both new and old, and hopefully give you a laugh or two along the way. The Dolls of Horror is available on all podcast streaming services, including Apple and Spotify. Visit thedollsofhorror.com for more information.
I'm Pitney.
And I'm Amelia.
And we're from
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique. Who are we?
Why, we're your new best friends, of course.
Pull up a seat and listen in to what we think about people, places, and things.
Geeky stuff, horror movies, weirdos we know, spirituality, sexuality, food, filth.
It's like eavesdropping on the people at the next table for like an hour or so, and wishing you could join in on their conversation.
Also, do you see who just came in? Look at that hair.
Oh, honey, just no.
Bitchiness, you're soaking in it.
We soften your hands while you do the dishes.
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique.
We're here.
We're queer. And
We're in your
ear.
Every other Friday, where all the classiest podcasts are found.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. As promised, we're going to jump right into our feedback. I would say less individual feedback and just longer feedback from less people.
Yeah, no, it's
Makes
amazing.
sense? Yeah.
In depth, really well thought out, dissertation style feedback, which is definitely much appreciated.
Yes, we love it. So kicking it right off is my pal Lisa Dupre. Hello, Lisa.
Oh, hello, Lisa. I guess you're slumming from the K-pop stuff to watch this little show, huh?
If you are regular listeners, Lisa wrote in very often while we were covering Kingdom, the Korean zombie drama, because Lisa loves all things produced in Korea. So she is slumming, watching an American television show, and we appreciate it because she sends in a very detailed feedback. So onward. So Lisa says, Dear Diana and Steve, I don't know about you guys, but the little Northern Exposure reunion at the top of the show with Graham Greene and Elaine Miles, yes, that's her name, made me so happy it almost made up for all the emotional devastation of the first 5 episodes. Almost. Mostly. She goes on to say, I love this show. Love it. I love it so much I don't even mind that it isn't in Korean. See what happened there? For me, the biggest thing is that it feels really grounded. I don't know the source material as well as I would like, but I do know great writing when I see it. I agree wholeheartedly with what Diana said during your podcast for episode 1, that zombie movies and shows are as much science fiction as they are horror. Good sci-fi is always a clear reflection of the modern world, so a detail like having the Boston QZ be the north end to the waterfront is brilliant, because that neighborhood was designed to be separated from the rest of the city. True fact. Admittedly, the intention was to keep poor people and immigrants away from the hoity-toity Beacon Hill types. If you really want horror, look up how that neighborhood was ravaged during the 1918 flu hit. But it works just as well the other way around. Only a couple of streets in and out, blocked by the ocean on the other side. It'd be super easy to wall everyone in. It's also amazing to learn that the outbreak kicked off in Indonesia, because, of course, that would lead to a global crisis. The Western world doesn't make anything for itself anymore, so for the same reason that we all know the name of the city, Wuhan, if it starts in Jakarta, it's going everywhere. And how good is this show that they put the detail of Joel, Sarah, and Tommy talking about the bombing in Jakarta without knowing why it's a thing until episode 2? I love these guys. She continues and says, globalization, climate change, and the rise of fascist behavior in countries that are supposed to be democracies, all of it scarier than the monsters they caused, and those things are proper scary. And how about that little nod to the start of the outbreak being during the second Bush administration from the people who brought you the Patriot Act? Here comes the most terrifying version of FEMA imaginable. Yeah, she's not wrong. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that most video game adaptations are usually terrible, and this one isn't. I think the reason why most don't work is because the medium of gaming is super personal. Even in the most linear, story-driven game, the experience is wildly different depending on who is playing it. That's a good point. Some people are completionists, doing every side quest, reading every note in every desk drawer. Some focus on the main story. Some are powering through because they are here to shoot shit. Myself, I've been all of the above at some point. So our experiences are individual and specific and different, and no movie or show can possibly include all of that and be accessible to someone who hasn't played the game at all. The Last of Us isn't trying to fulfill our individual needs, it's aiming for all of us at once. I think this show works because every character I've seen so far has been a person, not an NPC, which is the non-playable character, which is usually background people in a video game. A person, everything has been a person, not an NPC, a person. I am invested in the leads, of course, but I have been investing in people all the way through the show, from the soldier struggling with the order to shoot Joel and Sarah, to this awesome native couple making each other laugh while being held at gunpoint. I care that Maria is trying to keep Jackson running and that Tommy is freaked out about being a father. I can't even talk about Tess or Bill and Frank or Henry and Sam. The reason we're all so devastated by the loss of characters we literally just met an hour or so before is because everyone involved in the show has done such an amazing job making them human. That's way more important than fan service mistakes that other movies have made in the past. Now, Steve, I have a tiny bone to pick with you.
Oh, no.
You're
Go ahead, pick away. I did it this time.
I feel like the fact that you mentioned the point in the game where you play as Ellie because Joel is out of commission for a bit sort of set me up to expect Joel to fall off his horse. I don't know if this is actually that point in the game or if there's something worse coming up, but come on, dude. Some of us haven't played it yet. And that being said, I found out that the game is being released for PC at the end of March, and I'm totally buying it, largely because of how well you're selling it. Keep talking about the game. It's really interesting. Just maybe wait on talking about stuff that happens later in the story. Mwah! Kisses and hugs, Lisa Dupre. And she writes, P.S. Missed the long emails from me, didn't you? It's okay to admit it. I just wanted to let you know that I've still been listening. I just didn't have much to say about Fear the Walking Dead because my mother taught me if I can't say something nice and I don't have my own podcast, then I shouldn't say anything at all.
Oh, that is news straight out of Thumper's mom.
Oh,
that
brilliant.
is awesome.
Brilliant.
And Lisa, I have to tell you that this was the moment that I was talking about. So.
Good. So there isn't some other moment coming forward that you. Okay. So.
No, and I felt bad when I was saying it at the time, I guess what I should have, in terms of just gameplay, I should have just phrased it with the idea that as you go through the game, you don't always play Joel. Sometimes you get to play Ellie as well, and it kind of shifts back and forth, and just left it at that. And I should, and I, for some reason, I felt the need to say you get to play Ellie because Joel is unconscious, or he's just incapacitated.
Yeah.
And so again, hopefully it wasn't too much of a spoiler. And trust me, there is some amazing stuff coming up that like I said, I'm just like cackling inside because I cannot wait. Based on how they've done it so far, I just know they're going to nail it. And so I can't wait for all you guys who don't know what's coming to see what's coming because, there's some great stuff. So
nice. What's funny is I knew the different gameplay stuff, but the person I heard it from said it kind of like how you said you should have said it. They said it kind of like, because they were describing the game as like, what, is it first person shooter? Is it story? Is it whatever? Mm-hmm. And they said that it's, sometimes you're playing as Joel and sometimes you're playing as Ellie. So it can shift focus, And they just said it sort of matter of fact, like it was just describing the gameplay itself. So,
yeah.
So I knew that, but I didn't think that would affect like, yes, Ellie becomes there because something must happen to Joel, but it was just it was the way it was said was more like how you said you should have said it.
I know. So I apologize. And just another point, Lisa, that I you talked about the different styles of gaming. I do all of them. Or like the first time when I play the game, I just play it to get through the story and kind of hit the major things. And after I've done that, usually then I'll go back and then I will try and do all the side quests and find all the little Easter eggs and all the little things that are hidden away that might unlock additional things and so on. And sometimes I'll do it and I'll have the internet open, with a cheat guide saying, there are 5 things in this level you need to find, and it'll tell me where they are. Because again, I've already played it. I know what's going to happen. I just want to get all the stuff. So I totally agree with you. That is totally a thing in terms of people who play the games and their style of how they're playing. And you're right. That's usually where the movies fail because they can't do all of that stuff. Yeah. And so this is kind of the exception so far because the story is so rich, they don't have to fall back on those gamey gimmicks. So yeah. Amazing feedback.
Yeah. Awesome. I am so excited to have you back in our lives again, Lisa. Yay! Thank you so much for binging to catch up.
Yes.
She mentioned on Facebook something about episode 3, which is obviously the Bill episode. And I told her, I was like, don't worry, there's more devastation to come because of Henry and Sam and everything. And I'm like, if you think this is bad, it only gets better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So and then of course I was like, there's a podcast, that's covering this. And she says, yes, I know. I'll get to feedback once I get caught up. So she said she was listening as she was watching the episode. So yay, Lisa's back.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yay.
And if only we didn't have a podcast, we would have nothing to say about Fear the Walking Dead either. So
I know.
We're right there with you.
Yeah. I would have given up on it I don't know, 3-4 years ago easily.
At least, yeah.
Even with my future Australian ex-wife in there, I still would have been like, yeah, I can just look at a picture of her and be okay. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so moving on.
Yeah.
We go to the international desk, and we are going over to across the pond to England, where our English superfan Bev2 has checked in via the email. She says, "Hi guys." So hello, Bev.
Hello.
How are you? Hope you're well. She goes, well, this episode went from a gentle trek to an uneasy family reunion to an anxiety-filled trip to college. I'm hoping that Joel's brother's lurking somewhere ready to save his big brother, but who can tell with this show?
Ooh, I like that wrinkle. I'm keeping that in the back of my head as like, Tommy thinks that it's going to be bad, so he followed them or
He
whatever.
followed them after, okay.
Yeah,
or maybe like a day after they left, someone showed up and said, yeah, that place is deserted, and so Tommy's trying to,
damn it, I'll go get them and save them.
That's right. That's right. I could tell you, but I've been told that I will be killed if I do that, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I would not bring down the wrath of the Lisa.
I will not. No.
Yeah.
So she goes on to say, so far this season has given us a gut punch around every corner. Mm-hmm. It started by focusing on Joel's daughter, then quickly jumped ahead to focus on Joel. It wouldn't surprise me if we lost Joel and the story became solely about Ellie. Yeah, I can't. Okay, anyway, I hope I'm wrong, as I'm beginning to fall for Joel, and then she puts Pedro in parentheses, and I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. Am I the only one that struggles to trust Tommy's wife? ? I'm fairly sure last time we saw her in the apocalypse, she had a bunch of children torturing Daryl and Michonne, and that's a really good pickup. Yes, I picked on that as well. And it was funny.
She looks familiar. Where have I seen her before? And I IMDb'd her. I was like, oh, that bitch.
Me too. Because at first I'm like, I know I've seen her somewhere. I know it. And then I'm like, and it was like, usually I'm just like, oh, whatever. And then I go on, but this was enough that I'm like, no, I got to see where the hell do I know her from? So, I'm right there with you where it's just like, yeah, we know her in the apocalypse. She ain't trustworthy at all.
No, not at all.
So great catch, Bev. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. And then she finishes it off by saying, yet another great episode. Fingers crossed that Joel makes it. Thanks again for a wonderful podcast, Bev, too. Aw,
Bev.
You are adorable. Thank you. That's so sweet.
I always, when we go to read Bev's feedback, I always want to, be cheeky and do it in a British accent or whatever. And I just feel like that would be condescending and terrible, and I would never do that.
Right.
I don't want to.
Look, I think all of us have learned by now that it is perfectly acceptable for English actors to play Americans.
But not the other way around.
But it just doesn't work. I think, Gwen Paltrow in Sliding Doors kind of proved to everyone.
Yeah.
It's just better off, leave the British to the British.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make when we were texting about Sliding Doors.
Do you like boats?
Yeah, do you like boats, Helen?
He actually doesn't say Helen, but it's still.
I know, he just says, do you like boats?
Yeah.
But that's just what Jen and I would say to each other. She just,
What are you doing 2 weeks from Saturday? Killing myself. Do you think you'll be done by 2?
Do you like boats?
That's so great. Lovely movie.
And her roommate is hilarious too. She's like giving him the shit at the door. Anyway, off of Sliding Doors. Yes. Let's move away. Still a very good movie. Even if you dislike Gwyneth Paltrow, John Hannah is adorable, and all the other supporting characters are fantastic.
Jerry is just, and his friend Russell are hilarious.
Oh my god, the way he laughs at everything, and oh my god, I just forgot until now. Oh my god, Jean Triplehorn, what a great role for her. She's so terrible in this movie.
She is. She's terrifying.
Yeah, I love it. All right, moving
on.
So next up, we got our weekly email from Amelia of the Pitney and Amelia podcast. Hey, Amelia, very excited to hear from you again. Amelia writes in and says, Heidi host, Diana and Steve. How exciting being caught up! Exclamation points. I agree. She says, okay, before I dive into episode 6, what? We got so much to talk about.
I know we did.
She says, I want to backtrack a little because I realized that I wrote so fast last time that it didn't make exactly the point I thought I was making about Kathleen's vendetta against Henry. Okay. I knew her brother had been a leader of the uprising and that his charisma and likability brought a lot of people into the movement. But even Perry, oh, by the way, we called him Percy for an entire episode and his name is Perry. So sorry about that, folks. We just got pulled down the path and we're like, Percy it is. Sorry, actor who played Perry. We called you the wrong thing. Anyway, so she says, but
Pierce is his name.
Yeah. But even Perry said he didn't actually make things happen the way Kathleen did. I'm not 100% sure if she was in a leadership position before Michael was killed or if she took over when he died, but I'm definitely sure that Kathleen was the one who got shit done. Michael would have been too busy singing Kumbaya or something. He could lead people into joining the cult, but he isn't the guy who gets people to work. And what I noticed about Kathleen was that she was so singularly focused on avenging his death that even as Fedra had just fallen and it was complete chaos and the city was still burning, all Kathleen cared about was, where is Henry? Also, nobody ever asks, Henry who? Which would have been reasonable, I think. It's not like she asked, where is Archibald? Even Perry is like, we've got a perimeter around the city, and a door-to-door search would take a lot of men, and there are a lot of other things that take priority. And Kathleen is like, please, bitch. And with one look, she shames him into pretending that finding Henry is everyone's number one priority. Also, I think Perry was sweet on her, but it's a whole other thing to unpack. Maybe because it's Melanie Linsky, and I can't imagine anyone being in her presence and not crushing hard. But anyway, they kind of lucked out that they got ripped to shreds by Infected because all that work they did freeing Kansas City went to shit really fast, and there was soon going to be nobody left to point fingers of blame at them. Hurrah! Okay, so episode 6, Focus, Amelia. That's not me saying it. Amelia said it to herself. She's speaking in
I don't know. I think you just said it.
I read what was written. It says Focus, Amelia.
I don't see that on here.
He's such an asshole. Anyway, she continues and says, I haven't been to Wyoming since I was a kid, and it wasn't in the wintertime, but I find that part of the country especially gorgeous and perfect and wonderfully dangerous in a humans stay the hell out sort of way. I agree. And when the talk of the quote-unquote river of death happened, I got super distracted pulling up maps because I had this feeling they didn't really play out. I had this feeling that didn't really play out, but it might still someday. I guess they haven't gotten that far west yet if they're talking about Highway 25. She said her feeling was that the river where everything west of it is death might be a reference to how as you get closer to Yellowstone, there's definitely less ground that's safe to walk on because of all the geothermic activity out there. Y'all can look that up on your own. It's quite the wormhole to go down if you're into that sort of thing. But it's such a gorgeous landscape out that way, and all that beautiful pristine snow only made the husband and me wish we'd had more winter episodes of Walking Dead. I agree. I hadn't thought about the Yellowstone idea with all the, the geothermic stuff and whatever.
The geysers and whatnot.
Yeah, like that stuff, that can kill you as soon as you step into that water.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on, she says, in speaking of that, I'll focus on more stuff The Walking Dead didn't do, but Last of Us seems to have no trouble doing. Acknowledging that people poop. Acknowledging that periods happen and must be dealt with expeditiously. Acknowledging that frequent gunfire affects a person's hearing. My father was a field artillery specialist when he was young. He's 92 now. Guess how deaf he is. And acknowledging that mental and emotional stress can result in actual physical symptoms. If I'm judging Joel's shortness of breath and racing heartbeat correctly, I think that's how they described it, especially combined with the repetitive dreams of failure, that's definitely something that every damn character on The Walking Dead should have been experiencing, except there was no time to explore that outside of Carol has a bad couple of days and goes on walkabout, and Morgan learns Tai Chi and makes friends with a goat, which isn't much in 11 seasons. I agree. She finishes up by saying there was so much cuteness and heart-hurtiness in this episode, but I know you both covered everything perfectly, and I've already said gobs, so I'll let Ellie and not Will Livingston have the last word. Damn. And she wrote it not as damn, like damn it, like D-A-M-N, but she put damn D-A-M, like a water dam.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
snap.
You Livingston. Oh, snap.
Oh, no, so she funny. Didn't.
She did. She did, and she did.
That's awesome.
Thanks for writing in. We love, love, love your emails, Amelia. Keep them coming.
Yeah, so great.
Oh, and she also, she sent a couple of clips. I'll have to share them with you. Some different YouTube things that she's like, this is hilarious. Watch this. And I swear I haven't watched them yet because I'm terrible at that stuff. Like reading things and doing things right when people send them. Who does that? So I will share them with Steve. We'll watch them and maybe share them on the page. If we like them, we'll see what you sent us. So there's some YouTube clips I'm going to forward to you. Hopefully they're not porn.
What do you mean, hopefully not?
I'm just kidding. Anyway, thanks again, Amelia.
Do you realize that if they took down all the porn that's on the internet, there'd only be one site left, and that would be a site that said bring back the porn?
Yeah, probably. That sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, you're right. That was amazing feedback. Thank you so much, Amelia.
Thank you.
And yes, in that first or second episode when Ellie's grabbing all the toilet paper, it was a nice little moment to remind everyone of that classic book, Everybody
Poops.
Yes. Yep. So I agree. All right. So our next piece of feedback comes from Karen. Don't call me Lauren Cohen. And this is via the Facebook. Hello, Karen. How are you? And she says, hi. This will be short as my kids are coming off a long 5-day weekend. Send help.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do. I mean, I could send money, guns, and lawyers if you'd like, but
sorry.
All right, so she goes on to say, I really like that old couple from the beginning. They're like 1,000, which was Ellie's line. Nice touch. Ellie had a bunch of great lines. Say congrats, Joel.
Yeah.
Getting kind of worried about Joel. He seemed like he was having an issue even before getting stabbed. At least he got some new boots. Yes, that's true. And I like that they showed yet another use for duct tape in this episode.
Yeah.
But even more so that they actually acknowledge that, hey, like, manufactured clothing, it wears out if you wear it every day for 6 months.
Yeah, like my sneakers are falling apart.
Yeah, right. But again, we were just talking in Amelia's email about, Walking Dead, the universe in general. Really, there's a lot of stuff, real life stuff that they just kind of glossed over.
Yep.
And she was obviously talking about more biological stuff, whereas Karen is just pointing out the more, clothing related stuff of, if you wear the same pair of shoes outside in the elements for 6 months, they're going to fall off your feet.
Yep,
and that's
eventually.
And that's what you see, that one boot he's trying to tape together. It's like the heel or the sole is separating from the rest of the boot, which is bad. So
it is bad.
I think that's really fun. And then she goes on to say, one last thing I heard on another podcast that I thought was funny. This person said that the only thing that would have made Kathleen worse is if she had been named Karen. Love it. I love it. There's in Chicago here. There's a morning radio show that I listen to when I'm at work, and they do a segment every week called "Whose Karen Is It?" And basically, people will send in social media posts that have been placed by someone, and they're being a Karen. They're complaining about something.
Yeah.
Extremely superficial and stuff they shouldn't be complaining about. And then they make it a contest where the listeners have to figure out which part of Chicago or Chicago suburb that Karen is from. And
who does she belong to?
Yes, and it's very amusing. But yeah, you're right. If they named her Karen, it would have you'd be like, oh well, that explains a lot. So
yeah.
And then she finishes by saying cheers. So,
cheers.
So Karen, thank you for the feedback. Go deal with your children, and hopefully you will survive to provide feedback for the next episode. So thanks for writing in. That was awesome.
Yeah. And surviving a rough couple of years of having the name Karen. That sucks, man. Sorry for you.
I know.
Terrible. All right. So what's coming up on the podcast? Well, we're going to keep covering Last of Us. That's for sure.
Yes. for 3 more weeks at least.
At least. And hopefully by the next time we talk, this little, coffee cough thing that I have will be better. Let's hope. Knock on some wood here. Not loud because the microphone's right here, and that would be, no one wants them in their ears.
Nope. Yep.
So next week's episode, episode 7, title of the episode is Left Behind. We haven't gotten an episode description yet, which is pretty common. We probably won't get one until the day it's released. But they did give us clips at the end of the episode, and it's pretty obvious that a main feature of next week's episode, like we said, they can't really show us what happens to Joel because it would give it away. So they're just showing what the other possible storyline will be. So there's clips that show Ellie's flashbacks to that story she told to Tess about breaking into the mall that they weren't supposed to break into. And it's the whole thing leads up to her being bit, but it shows that there's this girl with her who's a friend of hers, but it looks like there's some hand holding, so I'm not sure if they're gonna explore that there might be some crushing or some feelings there. It's not sure. It's ambiguous, but they could go down that path. It could just be two girls with platonic friendship, which has been known to girls just hold their hands. What are you going to do? So we'll see how that pans out, but it's definitely someone who appears to be closest to Ellie during this time period. So I'm very interested to watch it. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
Again, there's no plans for HBO to release early again like they did for the Super Bowl thing. So as soon as you watch it on Sunday, when the episode comes out, send us your feedback. We've been loving the emails. That's great. Send us stuff through Facebook so you know all the proper channels. So we can't wait to hear from you for next week's episode. Before we wrap up,
but I would just add that, and I think I talked about this a little bit, that when you complete the game, it unlocks a little bonus mini game, which is Ellie and that girl in the shopping mall.
Oh, cool.
So
all right.
So yeah, and based on what they showed, just in those real quick, clips for next week, it looks pretty close to what they did in the game. So yeah, I'm really interested to see like we were just talking about a little earlier. Maybe it's going to be one of those, we have the current Ellie trying to save Joel story, and then as she's doing that, she's remembering the events of the mall, and so we're doing the current Ellie story and the flashback Ellie story, or maybe it's just a complete Ellie flashback. It
could
be.
Know. Yeah. That's the thing I think we have to mentally be prepared for. You need to be prepared for this to be the Eastman episode, people. We're going to learn all about Morgan and this guy who really likes to make cheese. Meanwhile, you're not going to have any idea what happened to Glenn.
Right.
And it sucks, but that's a possibility. So just keep that in your hearts. And,
when Joel fell off the horse, was there a dumpster there? I don't remember.
No, but couldn't he have just rolled underneath the horse and you wouldn't have seen him? I don't know.
I think that would have worked.
It's possible. That might have worked. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out next week. Maybe we'll find out in 2 weeks. Who knows? So before we wrap up for this week, we mentioned last week that Steve was going to LA for the weekend to attend a Doctor Who convention, and you are now back in the Midwest. And tell us about it. Tell us a little bit about your time in LA over the weekend. Details.
It was amazing. The only thing I would definitely say is don't go for that 7 a.m. flight home. Because you have to get up at 4, and that's never fun. This was there's a convention out in Los Angeles called Gallifrey 1. This was the 33rd year that they had done it. Not 33 in a row because COVID in 2020 they canceled because COVID had kind of canceled everything. So but again, amazing show. And of course this year 2023 is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. So it's a big anniversary year. Of course, we're going to have Jodie Whittaker just finished her run as the Doctor, so we have David Tennant playing the Doctor right now for 3 specials, and then he's gonna regenerate into the new guy who is this star of a show on British television called Sex Education, and his first name is Shooty, and I'm blanking on what his last name is right now, but he's this young, incredibly good-looking dude that's taking over. So there are lots of hearts swooning all across the world when they announced that. But this particular show out in Los Angeles had Jodie Whittaker there, and this was her first pure Doctor Who convention appearance in the United States. She had gone to San Diego Comic-Con in the past, but this was the first show that was dedicated exclusively to Doctor Who. And she was adorable. That's all I can say. I got to interact with her 3 times during the weekend, and we took a lovely photo together, which I have posted on my social media, and we can repost it on the Aim for the Head one if you want. But yeah, she was lovely. She was adorable. Just couldn't have been nicer. The showrunner from her time, Chris Chibnall, was there, and he was really great. He was reminded me a little of Greg Nicotero in that he did not charge for autographs. If you had he had nothing for you to sign like Greg, but if you had something with you that you wanted him to sign, he would just do it for free. That was nice. I thought very nice. And then there were a bunch of other Doctor Who people there as well. Some of the classic companions, one of the classic doctors. And then the other, just for me personally, just a great moment. There were 2 cast members from the original Battlestar Galactica from the 1970s.
Oh yeah.
And one of them was Cassiopeia, which is this gal named Loretta Spang, who, even though she's in her 70s, she's still super, super beautiful. But back in the day, she was pretty amazeballs hot. So that was a real like thrill moment for me, that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to 2 people from Battlestar Galactica. So that was fun. So I had a great time. Ate really rich, great food, and stayed at the Marriott, which is a really nice hotel. And Doctor Who fans are the nicest folks in the universe, and made a lot of new friends and stuff. So it was a really good time. Amazing. So for everybody listening, if you've never gone to a convention before, and we talk about it because we go to a lot of them.
Yes.
It's same thing. The horror fans, again, I would say, and no matter what the fandom is, 99% of them are the nicest, sweetest people that are super friendly and wonderful people. There's always going to be that toxic element in any fan base that's unavoidable, but the vast majority of them are super nice and fun, and it's just a great way to meet some of these stars, these celebrities, these actors and people, but it's also a great way to meet other people that are just, they're into the same thing that you are,
Yeah.
So
yeah, some of our most fun times we have at conventions are interacting with other people, like in the line waiting for the person. You chat about like, what's the poster you're holding, what's the thing you're holding, and it's like captive audience first of all. What else are you gonna do? You're standing there, and you're talking to someone else who is a fan of the thing that you are doing right then and there, and it's great. It's such a welcoming and warm vibe when you go to those things.
It really is. Yeah, I just remember when we chatted up Brian in front of us for the line for Ian McCullough, and he told us the story that he was there. It was his anniversary, and he left his wife in Florida to fly to Chicago to meet Ian McCullough. And we're like, dude, what are you doing?
And then he gets to the front and he tells Ian McCullough, and Ian McCullough took a picture off the pile and signed one to the wife. And didn't they call her too, or do a FaceTime? He did like a little video.
He did a video basically saying it's my fault. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, so again, great stories like that. So yeah, if you're ever thinking about going to a show nearby, it's totally worth it. Even if you just go on a Saturday, buy a day pass and go on a Saturday, you'll have fun and you'll find all kinds of cool stuff to blow your money on that you shouldn't spend on, but you will. And it's amazing. So yeah, absolutely go. Yeah. I had a lovely time. It was really cool.
And I would say too, we are lucky in that we live near one of the largest cities in America, so we've got access to a lot of large and mid-sized conventions that come through. And we don't go to half of the stuff that comes through. We go to the the ones we know and we've been to many times, but there are probably many others, even not necessarily Chicago, but close to Chicago that we could go to. But I've noticed too, there's so many different markets that are opening up, and, people, if they can get a few people together and bring someone, conventions bring in, if they can book like 3 or 4 people, it helps, and they can book even more people because those people are coming. And so keep an eye out, even if you live in a rural or a small town kind of area. keep your eye out for stuff that might be coming near you, because, you know, conventions are like that whole vibe. It really does reach far out. You know, every time I turn around, you know, and I follow a couple of the Walking Dead people, you know, you turn around and, you know, Seth Gilliam or Ross Marquand is saying that they're going to be at, you know, such and such convention. And I look at it and I'm like, what town is that? You know,
they're in
and
Lexington, Kentucky, or,
Yeah.
they're going to somewhere in Tennessee or North Carolina. I mean, it's all over. Yeah, it's crazy.
I always end up looking at the details when I'm get really curious, and maybe, you know, Seth and Ross are one of like maybe 5 headliners, maybe at some of the smaller ones, and that's fine. And they've got these other people there. Go, you'll have a blast. And a majority of these people, they love meeting the fans. It fills them up so much, and it's not lip service when a lot of these celebrities say, you know, it's all about meeting the fans. You can see it that there are people that like change their day and make their day better. So it's if you can help contribute to that, you should do it.
Yeah. No, again, you're right. Everything you just said, 100 plus. You know, I mean, it's a really great way to kind of, you know, get closer to the community that we're all in. That, you know, we love this stuff, and there are places you can go that celebrate this stuff.
Yeah, my only regret is that I wish I started going to conventions sooner. I just didn't, because I didn't really have anybody to sort of go with, and I wasn't sure that there would be, you know, because I don't read comic books, and they've always been sort of posted as like, this is a comic con, but there's so many pop culture ones too that you don't have to be a comic book reader. You can just be a consumer of pop culture, which I have been for pretty much my whole life.
Chicago now has a Golden Girls convention, so
I mean there's really something for everybody out there. If it's something you're interested in, there's a convention around it, I promise. Speaking of which, we probably have about a little over a month, and C2E2 is going to be happening. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, Chris Evans.
I know, Captain America's going to be there.
And hey, his autograph is only $250, so get it in now, people.
I got money burning a hole in my pocket, is what I'm saying. I'm not sure it'll be spent on Chris Evans, but hey, you know, someone's getting my money. I just don't know yet.
Plus,
we're going to go ahead.
Fan Expo announced that Peter Weller's coming.
I saw that.
That's right. We have, well, at least you have some really, really distinct memories of Peter Weller.
I do have some distinct memories of Peter Weller. I think everybody that works at the Goodman Theater has distinct memories of Peter Weller.
Right. That's right.
I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. Nobody who works there now.
No.
Back in the day. But yeah. What were you going to say?
Say Jody works there now, but.
Yeah, but I don't want to throw Jody under the bus. I know. Yeah. She's worked there a really long time. And it has nothing to do with the Goodman. He's lovely. He's a wonderful guy.
He is. I'm just saying he's coming. So I can't wait for that interaction.
That might be worth a few dollars just to see what would happen.
Absolutely.
And if we do that, we will tell you guys all about it. We promise. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week, folks. We look forward to chatting with you again next week to talk about episode 7. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots, even with Peter Weller, they just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
So,
okay.
Yeah, good episode, nonetheless.
You should save all that for the podcast. I want to hear that anger.
Yeah, I'll try and squeeze it in between, coughing and being sick. Mm-hmm.